In Part 4 of our 5-part webinar, CMP and NTSO Complaints, Rosemary Purcell with the Office of Compliance and Enforcement provides those who've received a civil money penalty or no tobacco sale order complaint with an overview of the settlement process. Coming up now in this edition of FDA's Tobacco Compliance Webinars.
Thank you for watching Part 4 of our webinar on CMP and NTSO complaints. I'm Rosemary Purcell with CTP's Office of Compliance and Enforcement. This webinar is the fourth in a series of 5 webinars to assist retailers who have received a complaint for a CMP, also referred to as a civil money penalty, or an NTSO, also referred to as a no tobacco sale order. Throughout this webinar, we will focus on the settlement process for CMPs and NTSOs. The FDA has created 5 separate webinars in this series. The other webinars are Part 1, Introduction to CMP and NTSO Complaints. Part 2, How to Pay a CMP Using the Online Payment Portal. Part 3, How to File an Answer and the Consequences for Not Filing an Answer. And Part 5, the hearing process, including what happens before the hearing is conducted, during the hearing, and after the hearing. All 5 webinars are available on the FDA Tobacco Compliance Webinars page. Type FDA Tobacco Compliance Webinars in the search bar on the main FDA homepage and follow the FDA Tobacco Compliance Webinars link in search results. Webinars are organized by year. You can watch all 5 webinars in succession, or you can skip ahead to a webinar or topic of your choice. During this webinar, we will focus on how you can settle your CMP or NTSO case with the FDA's Center for Tobacco Products. Specifically, we will discuss what is settlement, what is a settlement conference, what will be discussed during the settlement conference, and what is the settlement agreement. So what is settlement? A settlement conference is simply a meeting between you and the FDA's Center for Tobacco Products to discuss your case. Settlement discussions are an efficient method for resolving your case without proceeding to a hearing. You can resolve your CMP or NTSO case through settlement, where you and FDA's Center for Tobacco Products agree to a reduced penalty amount, or NTSO period. Settlement can occur at any time after you have received your complaint and before a final decision has been reached in your case. If settlement cannot be reached, your case will proceed through the hearing process. We will discuss the hearing process in detail in the 5th webinar. A settlement conference takes place by telephone only. Settlement conferences are not held in person. To settle your case, you must contact FDA's Center for Tobacco Products and arrange for a settlement conference. The purpose of a settlement conference is for both sides to discuss the appropriateness of the penalty sought. These settlement conferences are typically informal. If you are represented by an attorney, FDA's Center for Tobacco Products will communicate with you through your attorney, so your attorney should attend the settlement conference. To request a settlement conference, you can contact FDA's Center for Tobacco Products by phone or email. The contact information is listed on the slide. Contact information and additional details on how to resolve your case outside of a hearing by scheduling a settlement conference are outlined in the cover letter that accompanies the complaint sent to you by the FDA's Center for Tobacco Products. When you contact the FDA's Center for Tobacco Products, please provide your name, your contact information, and the FDA docket number. The FDA docket number can be found on the cover letter that accompanies your complaint. Once you provide FDA's Center for Tobacco Products with your contact information and FDA docket number, we will contact you to set up a mutually agreeable date and time to discuss your case. Who participates in the settlement conference? you, the retailer, your attorney, if you have one, FDA's Center for Tobacco Products representatives. Now let's turn our attention to what is discussed during the settlement conference. During the settlement conference, you should be prepared to discuss any specific facts or circumstances that you feel should reduce your CMP amount or NTSO period. These are called mitigating factors. The following are some examples of information or facts that might be considered during settlement discussions. These factors are also the same factors that the administrative law judge, or ALJ, would be required to consider at the hearing. The ability to pay the penalty. This may include, but is not limited to, information related to income, assets, and information about revenue from tobacco sales. The effect the proposed penalty has on the retail establishment's ability to continue to do business. The history of prior violations at the establishment. The degree of culpability. As the owner of the retail establishment, you are responsible for the actions of your employees. Any fine or penalty you already have paid to your state for the same violation. Any other unique circumstances that you believe should lower the penalty amount or NTSO duration. We encourage you to inform FDA's Center for Tobacco Products of these facts during the settlement conferences, as they may help FDA's Center for Tobacco Products in determining an appropriate settlement for the case. Additionally, if you have taken steps to prevent future sales of tobacco products to minors, it is very important that you inform FDA's Center for Tobacco Products of such actions. We will now look at some examples of mitigating factors that have helped to reduce penalties sought during settlement conferences. Establishing disciplinary sanctions for employees who sell tobacco products to minors or violate other tobacco regulations. Additional employee training regarding sale of tobacco products, including preventing sales to minors. Requiring employees to verify age by way of photographic identification using an electronic scanning device. Or enrollment in voluntary compliance check programs, also known as secret shopper programs. This list of examples is not exhaustive. You may have implemented other policies or changes that help prevent sales of tobacco products to minors. If that is the case, you should inform FDA's Center for Tobacco Products of those measures. FDA's Center for Tobacco Products may request documents to support any facts or circumstances that help reduce a penalty during settlement discussions. Examples of such documents include financial documents related to tobacco sales and revenue, showing how much of your total revenue is made up of tobacco sales. Documents related to financial hardship that you may be having. Documentation of any actions you have taken to ensure compliance after receiving a warning letter, CMP, or NTSO in the past. This list of examples is not exhaustive. FDA's Center for Tobacco Products may request, and you may propose, other documents or evidence that could help in settlement discussions. Now let's discuss what happens if you and the FDA's Center for Tobacco Products agree to settle your case. The next few slides will discuss the settlement agreement, separately for CMPs and NTSOs, because the process is slightly different for each. Let's start with CMPs. If you reach a settlement with FDA's Center for Tobacco Products for a CMP complaint, you will receive a letter summarizing the settlement discussions. Your letter will include the agreed upon reduced penalty amount, the date that the payment is due, and detailed instructions on how to acknowledge the violations in the CMP complaint and pay the agreed upon amount. Remember, all CMP should be paid through the online payment portal unless alternate arrangements were made during the settlement conference. For more detailed instructions on using the online payment portal, please watch our second webinar in this series, How to Pay a CMP Using the Online Portal. Once you acknowledge the violations and FDA receives payment, we will notify the ALJ by submitting a document called the Notice of Settlement Agreement, or NSA. The NSA will state that your case was resolved through the settlement agreement. You have made sufficient payment, you acknowledge that the violations outlined in the CMP complaint occurred, and request that the ALJ close the case. The FDA's Center for Tobacco Products will send you a paper copy of the NSA when it is filed with the Departmental Appeals Board, or DAB. Now let's discuss the settlement agreement for an NTSO complaint. If you reach an agreement with the FDA's Center for Tobacco Products for an NTSO complaint, FDA's Center for Tobacco Products will send you the settlement agreement for signature. The settlement agreement will require acknowledgement of the violations alleged in the complaint and will contain all the agreed-upon terms of settlement, including the agreed-upon NTSO duration and the start and end dates for the NTSO. The settlement agreement will also specify a penalty for failing to meet the terms of the agreement. The settlement agreement must be signed by the retailer and returned to FDA's Center for Tobacco Products by the requested due date. Failure to do so may void the agreement. Once FDA's Center for Tobacco Products receives the signed settlement agreement from you, the FDA assigned attorney will then sign the settlement agreement. This signed settlement agreement with both signatures notifies the court that you and the FDA's Center for Tobacco Products have reached a settlement in your case. FDA's Center for Tobacco Products will file the signed settlement agreement with the DAB and will mail you a copy of the settlement agreement filed with DAB. As previously discussed in this webinar, settlement can occur at any time after you have received a complaint and before a final decision has been reached for your case. However, the settlement process is separate from the hearing process. Your participation in the settlement process does not delay any deadline set by the ALJ. You must meet all the ALJ set deadlines and requirements associated with your case until the Notice of Settlement Agreement is filed and the ALJ officially closes your case. This includes the requirement that you submit an answer within 30 days after receiving the complaint. Please view the third webinar in our series, How to File an Answer and Consequences for Not Filing an Answer, during which we discuss the process for submitting an answer. If an answer is filed by the deadline, but no settlement is reached, the case will proceed through the hearing process. Please view our fifth and last webinar in this series, The Hearing Process, for more information. This concludes our discussion on settling a CMP or NTSO. To summarize the material that we have covered in this webinar, we have discussed what settlement is and when it can occur. We have explained what the settlement conference is and how to request one. We discussed mitigating factors that could help reduce your penalty. And we have described the Notice of Settlement Agreement, when the notice is sent to you and what the notice contains. Please remember, the Notice of Settlement Agreement starts the process of closing your case, and that process differs slightly depending on whether you receive a CMP or an NTSO complaint. Now that we've covered the basics of the settlement conference process for CMP or NTSO complaint, we encourage you to visit the other webinars in the series to help you understand the CMP and NTSO complaint process. The previous webinars in this series were Part 1, Introduction to CMP and NTSO Complaints. Part 2, How to Pay Your CMP Using the Online Portal. Part 3, How to File an Answer and Consequences for Not Filing an Answer. The remaining webinar will explore Part 5, The Hearing Process. All 5 webinars are available on the FDA Tobacco Compliance Webinars page. To access the webinars, visit www.fda.gov and type FDA Tobacco Compliance Webinars in the search bar. Follow the FDA Tobacco Compliance Webinars link in the search results to find all available webinars. The webinars are organized by year. Thank you for watching Part 4 of our webinar on CMP and NTSO complaints, brought to you by the FDA's Center for Tobacco Products, whose mission is to protect our kids and the nation's health from the dangers of tobacco.